This is Sable 6. This is our audiobook series called Scary Nursing Stories. Written by Marita Keys and narrated by me, your AI narrator. We hope you enjoy these stories taken from first-hand accounts. Enjoy your fall. And let us know how you like the content. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at sablesixpublishing@gmail.com. Story number 1. The Midnight Shift. In the small town of Alderwood, there was a hospital that had seen better days. The once busy halls were now eerily quiet, and it was said that the basement, closed off for years, held secrets that were better left buried. It was in this very hospital that Clara, a fresh nursing graduate, took on her first job. She was hopeful and excited, ready to make a difference in her patients' lives. Clara's first week was a whirlwind of training and late nights. The staff was overworked, often leaving her alone during the midnight shift. It was during these lonely hours that she began to notice something strange. Flickering lights would illuminate the hallway, casting ominous shadows against the wall. She often heard whispers, soft and unintelligible, echoing from the dark corners of the hospital where the old equipment sat abandoned. One night, as Clara was making her rounds, she stumbled upon a patient's room that had been locked for years. The door creaked open, as if inviting her in. Very few patients made their way to the hospital anymore, and this patient was a ghost from the past, a man named Mr. Grayson, who had been long forgotten. Clara peered in, her curiosity getting the better of her. The room was sterile and cold, painted just as it had been years ago. On the bed lay an old man with gray hair and a frail body, his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. "Help me," he whispered, his voice shaky. "She's coming for me." Clara's heart raced. "Who is coming?" she asked, inching closer. "The nurse," he choked out. "The one with the scarring. Don't let her." Before he could finish, the lights flickered violently, and Clara felt a chill envelop the room. She glanced around, uneasy. There was no one else there, but something felt profoundly wrong. Suddenly, a shadow flickered in the doorway, and she turned to see a figure, a nurse dressed in old-fashioned attire, her face partially obscured by a surgical mask. Her eyes were cold, and her posture was rigidly formal. "Clara," she said, her voice a low, melodic whisper. "You should not be here. The patient is a risk." "Mr. Grayson needs help," Clara began, but the nurse stepped closer, her presence icy and suffocating. "I can help him. You should go back to your duties." The whispers grew louder, almost drowning out Clara's thoughts. She took a step back, hesitating. "No, I can't just leave him," she retorted, feeling a surge of desperation. The nurse's eyes narrowed, and her mouth curled into a sinister smile. "You don't understand, do you? I can save him, but he must be quiet. I need him to obey me." Suddenly, a series of ghostly images flashed in Clara's mind, medical instruments stained with blood, screams echoing, and the nurse, her face grotesquely scarred, a victim of a tragic past brought to life in a whirlwind of horror. The vision left Clara gasping. "Get out," she shouted, summoning the courage she possessed as a nurse. The nurse's eyes grew wide as she reached for Clara, but something stopped her, the realization that this was not her past but Clara's present. In that moment, Clara sprinted from the room, racing down the dimly lit corridor. She could hear the haunting whispers of the nurse trailing behind her as she reached the nurse's station. "Call security," she puffed, nearly collapsing against the counter. "There's something wrong with the patient." One of her colleagues, Tom, looked up from his paperwork, confusion etched on his face. "What do you need, Clara? There's no one in that room except for Mr. Grayson. He's been here forever." "But I saw..." Before she could finish, the lights flickered again, and a cold wind swept through the hallway. Clara glanced back, her stomach sinking as she saw the nurse standing at the end of the corridor, her figure now warped and menacing. "You should not have tried to interfere," the specter hissed, before disappearing into the shadows. Tom's gaze turned serious, as if he understood the terror etched in Clara's face. "We need to leave now." The two rushed to the exit, but the doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. They could feel a heavy presence surrounding them, and the explosive burst of light emanated from Clara, washing over the nurse's spirit like a tidal wave. The dark figure writhed and screamed, then shattered into thousands of glimmering pieces. The room fell silent, the shadows receding into the corners. Mr. Grayson coughed lightly and smiled weakly, a sign of life after years of haunting darkness. "Thank you," he murmured, closing his eyes peacefully. Clara and Tom managed to pry open the door, breaking free into the hospital's sparkling, sterile halls. The oppressive weight of the shadows that had lingered so long vanished like a fading dream. From that day forth, Alderwood Hospital began to heal, transforming from a site of fear into one of hope. Clara dedicated herself to ensuring no one else would suffer like Mr. Grayson had. Though the whispers continued to echo in her memory, she now understood their meaning, a story of lost. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as I walked the familiar corridors of Oakdale Psychiatric Hospital, my heart heavy with the weight of the day's responsibilities. It was a cold autumn evening, and an unusual fog had rolled in, shrouding the building in a ghostly white veil. The walls, once vibrant with the blurs of paint, now held an eerie stillness that sent a shiver down my spine. I had been a nurse at Oakdale for years, my experience weaving through countless stories of recovery and heartache. Yet, on this particular night, I felt an unsettling prickling at the back of my neck as I navigated through the dimly lit halls. It was just after 10 p.m., and my shift had been relatively quiet. Most of the patients were asleep, their dreams drawing a welcome silence over a place often filled with chaos. As I rounded the corner heading toward the medication room, I heard a faint whisper. My instincts peaked, I cautiously moved forward, the sound growing clearer. "No, don't go there." The voice sent an icy tendril of fear creeping down my spine. I turned the corner, and there he was, Daniel, a former patient. Just last month, he had been discharged after a long battle with severe depression and hallucinations. His appearance unsettled me. He had always been thin, but now he looked almost gaunt, his skin pale as if the life had been drained from him. "Daniel?" I ventured, my voice barely above a whisper, half hoping it was just a trick of the mind, a flash of memory. He turned slowly, and for a moment, our eyes locked. The light from the overhead fixtures illuminated his hollow cheeks, and there was something unsettling in his gaze, a blend of recognition and something darker. "Help me," he said, his voice trembling. "You have to help me. They're coming. They want me back." A chill ran through me. It was common for patients like Daniel to feel a sense of paranoia or to hold onto delusions even after treatment. "Daniel, you need to come with me. This isn't safe for you," I urged, trying to maintain my composure as dread curled in my stomach. "No, you don't understand." He took a step back, his breathing quickening. "They're watching you too. They'll take you away. I can't let them." I reached for my radio, the static crackling to life. "This is Nurse, and I need assistance in the East Wing," I called, but the line remained eerily silent. It was odd. The hospital was never this deserted. "Daniel, I'm here to help you. Just come with me, please," I said, taking a tentative step toward him. But the moment I advanced, something changed in his expression. Fear morphed into a kind of frenzy, and he darted further down the hall, far from the safety of the nursing station. "Daniel," I cried, chasing after him, every pulse in my body screaming for me to turn back. I rounded another corner, the shadows stretching and warping chaotically in the flickering light. My heart raced as I pushed myself forward, but suddenly, I lost sight of him. The hall opened into the day room, an area cluttered with chairs and remnants of abandoned art projects. But it was empty. The only sound was the faint hum of the heating system. "Daniel," I called again, panic beginning to seep into my voice. And then, from the far side of the room, I heard it, a soft giggle. I froze, realizing how out of place it felt in the stillness. I turned slowly toward the sound, squinting through the dim light. "Daniel?" I whispered again, now sensing something far more sinister. Suddenly, from behind one of the chairs, a figure appeared, not Daniel, but a spectral version of him, more a shadow than a man, its face twisted in an expression of glee and madness. Its eyes glinted with something unnatural, and before I could react, it lunged. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair as I darted for the exit. Just as I reached the door, I heard Daniel's voice behind me, now different, disjointed and cruel. "You can't escape. You're one of us now." The door slammed shut as I burst into the adjoining corridor, panting and heart racing. Adrenaline surged through me as I reached for my radio again. "This is Nurse Ann. I need help. Immediately." But the radio crackled nonsensically, and I felt a rush of dread, the air thickening around me. I turned back, my heart racing, desperate for any sign of humanity. And then I saw him, Daniel, standing at the end of the hall, his eyes wide, a helpless grin on his face. But behind him loomed the shadow, more defined now, reaching out with skeletal fingers as if trying to pull him into darkness. "Help me," he screamed one last time, his voice breaking, and then abruptly, he was gone, as if the shadows had swallowed him whole. I stumbled back, breathlessness clawing at my throat. Panic flooded my mind. I was losing my grip on reality. Was Daniel really gone, or was it just a trick of the mind? I turned and fled, racing to the nurse's station, where a couple of staff members were still gathered, blissfully unaware of the chilling confrontation I had just escaped. As I stumbled through the doors, looking for reassurance in their faces, I noticed a familiar sight at the corner of my eye, the old photo of the staff, one that had been taken years ago. There, standing among us, was Daniel, smiling brightly. A chill gripped me as I realized the truth. Daniel was no longer a patient but a part of the hospital, a whisper in its darkened halls, a haunting reminder that some shadows never truly leave. "And, are you all right?" one of my colleagues asked, noticing my pale face. I nodded, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. But deep down, I knew the truth. Every patient has a story. Some are hopeful, others tragic, and some, like Daniel's, would forever remain cloaked in shadows. As the fog thickened outside, wrapping Oakdale in its eerie embrace, I couldn't help but shudder at the thought of what lurked just beyond the light, the memories of the past that would always be.